This is the Ethanol Report, the industry podcast from the Renewable Fuels Association since 2008. I'm Cindy Zimmerman. As we roll into Thanksgiving, we can be thankful that President-elect Donald Trump has named all 15 members of his cabinet, with the last nominee being Secretary of Agriculture, a position that has been very important to ethanol. The nominee is Texas native Brooke Rollins, who comes from an ag background and served in the first Trump administration on the Domestic Policy Council and the White House Office of American Innovation. I'm speaking with Geoff Cooper, President and CEO of the Renewable Fuels Association. And Geoff, first of all, what's RFA's assessment of Brooke Rollins?
We don't have much experience or much of a history with Ms. Rollins, but looking forward to sitting down with her and getting her up to speed on what's happening in the ethanol industry. And I think, again, when we look at just how important renewable fuels are to agriculture today, the two are tightly linked. Supporting agriculture and supporting farmers means supporting renewable fuels. And today, about 40% of corn demand comes from the ethanol industry. About 30% of demand for sorghum comes from renewable fuels. And roughly half of the soybean oil that's being produced today is going into renewable fuels. So it is a fundamental piece of the agriculture picture today. And if we're going to have a healthy and thriving and vibrant agriculture sector, we're going to need a healthy and vibrant and expanding and growing renewable fuel sector. So I think Ms. Rollins understands that, and we're certainly going to do our part to help get the latest information and data and answer any questions that she has about our industry and the incoming team has about our industry, and we're looking forward to that.
Well, after Secretary Vilsack has been such a champion for the ethanol industry over 12 years, and you really didn't have to do much education with him. Coming from
right.
Iowa, he knew, he already knew this story. So I guess really it's a matter of you needing to make sure she knows the story too.
Part of that story is reminding folks that, this is a crucial time for agriculture. Commodity prices are down, input costs are up, farmland values are down. We're seeing net farm income is falling, debt is rising. We know that the ag trade deficit is really growing quickly. And those are a lot of the same dynamics that the industry was facing 20 years ago. And it's one of the reasons that farmers got together and basically started the modern ethanol industry. And ethanol really lifted agriculture out of that situation, out of that malaise. And we think renewable fuels can do that again. So I think part of this is just revisiting the history of where we were and how far we've come, and the fact that renewable fuels like ethanol have been a tremendous catalyst for bringing wealth and prosperity back to rural America.
I know we talked about former New York Congressman Lee Zeldin for EPA before, but I wondered if you had any concerns about Trump's choice for Energy Secretary, oil and gas industry executive Chris Wright.
Well, we really don't know Mr. Wright that well. We're looking forward to getting to know him better and sitting down and having a visit about the ethanol industry and what's happening in the renewable fuels world these days. We don't have a tremendous amount of interaction with the Department of Energy on most policy matters. Obviously, EPA is in charge of administering the programs that are most important to the ethanol industry, but we do a fair amount of work with DOE, and of course, they're responsible for a lot of the reports and statistics and analysis that our industry relies on and the marketplace relies on. But we're looking forward to getting to know Mr. Wright better. In terms of the background, I think we feel like renewable fuels are part of that all of the above energy strategy that the incoming Trump administration has been embracing. And, we hear a lot of talk about American energy dominance and putting America first when it comes to energy and agriculture. Those are all things we agree with and we feel very strongly about. So we're confident that what we're doing in the renewable fuel space is going to be recognized by the incoming administration, and it's going to be part of their energy strategy moving forward. I mean, it doesn't get much more American than the ethanol industry. We're taking feedstock from American farmers. We're converting it into liquid fuel at American facilities that are owned and operated by American companies, and in many cases were built with investment from farmers. And then we're helping reduce dependence on foreign energy by producing 16 billion gallons of clean burning liquid fuel every year. So we think we've got a great story to tell that's going to fit into this incoming administration's narrative around American energy security and American energy dominance. And again, I think, we've heard people raise concerns about, how are we going to get along with the new administration when so many of these important figures are coming out of the kind of traditional oil and gas industry? And the answer to that is we're going to get along fine with them, because we understand that we need oil and gas. They understand that they need us. I think the dynamic has changed tremendously over the last 10 years. And a lot of those old battles that we were fighting with the oil industry over the renewable fuel standard and over E15 and a lot of those battles have sort of faded into the rearview mirror. And I think we're working together and share a common interest in promoting and preserving a long-term market for liquid fuels.
Well, it's still a long time anyway until the inauguration and when any of his cabinet picks will be approved. But the Department of Government Efficiency and Elon Musk already seem to be on the job and targeting where budget cuts might be made. Are you seeing any targets for DOGE that might impact the ethanol industry?
Well, I think we're going to be watching very closely what becomes of the Inflation Reduction Act programs, especially the tax credits like 45Z. That's all work that is very likely going to be left undone by the Biden administration on their way out. So a lot of the important decisions and a lot of the questions that need to be answered are going to fall to the Trump administration. And so we're going to be watching very closely what happens and what direction they want to take some of these programs. We know that there's strong support on both sides of the aisle, and there's strong support amongst many Republican leaders for some of the programs that came out of the Inflation Reduction Act, including 45Z. So again, I think it's going to be a lively discussion. We do think there are some changes coming, but we're going to continue to do everything we can to position our industry for success under a new administration. And a lot of the benefits of renewable fuels and a lot of the things that we do in the industry are not new to President Trump himself. And we know that he was a vocal supporter of ethanol and a vocal supporter of farmers during his first administration. So we're confident that we're going to see that again.
Well, right now as we speak, there are millions of people on the road traveling to see their loved ones and friends for Thanksgiving. And we know it's been a long year and prices have been high, but how does ethanol make it more affordable for us to hit the road for the holidays?
And we're talking about a record number of Americans traveling for this Thanksgiving holiday. And ethanol for the past 10, 15 years has been selling for far less than gasoline at the wholesale level. And so obviously, when you blend more ethanol into gasoline, it's lowering the price at the pump that consumers pay. That's not always something that the average consumer is paying attention to, but it's definitely a benefit that they're feeling and definitely a benefit to their pocketbooks. And so we're very excited about that. We actually had our chief economist do a quick analysis on just this holiday weekend, how much money consumers are saving because of the presence of ethanol in our gasoline supply. And it's more than $200 million just over this week or so around Thanksgiving. And that's a significant savings to consumers. And it really extends all year. It happens every time they fill up. But we really wanted to highlight that savings and that economic benefit this weekend while there are so many people out on the roadways.
It's just another reason for people to be thankful for farmers this Thanksgiving as they have their feast on the table. They not only that, they have fuel in their car that comes from farmers as well. And you
Yeah.
probably don't think about that, right?
No, they really don't. I think that is something that is often overlooked is the fact that more than 10% of our gasoline today is coming from ethanol, coming from crops that are grown here in the U.S. And a growing share of our diesel fuel is also coming from biodiesel and renewable diesel. And that is something to be thankful for. It's something that is not only reducing the cost of those fuels at the pump, but it's helping enhance our national energy security. And it's making our country less reliant on imports, not just of petroleum products and crude oil, but less dependent on imports of the minerals that are going into battery electric vehicles and other foreign sources of energy.
Between now and the end of the year, we have the lame duck session. Is there anything you would like to see, anything the ethanol industry is waiting on, expecting before the end of the year at this point?
Well, we certainly haven't given up hope on advancing a permanent solution for year-round E15 in the lame duck session, and we're thinking there may be an opening, there may be an opportunity to move that legislation. Of course, those bills have been introduced in both chambers. That issue is on the radar of leadership in both chambers. It's certainly something that we know has been a priority to Mr. Trump when he was president last time around. It's something that's been a priority for President Biden as well on his way out. So we're hopeful that the stars align during the lame duck session and we're able to finally get that E15 solution, that permanent fix over the goal line, so we can stop messing with that and move on to other issues when the calendar flips over and we've got a new Congress and new administration.
And what about EPA's tailpipe emission standards? Do you expect any movement on that before the end of the year, or what might happen with that when the new administration takes over?
Well, I think there's a couple of things to watch with the tailpipe standards. First of all, there is litigation challenging the 2027 through 2032 tailpipe standards that EPA finalized earlier this year. We're part of that litigation. We are challenging, along with more than 4 dozen other groups and companies, EPA's final standards. We think EPA grossly exceeded its authority by using the tailpipe standards to effectively mandate the production of electric vehicles. We don't think Congress ever intended for EPA to do that. There's no law on the books anywhere that gives EPA the authority or the direction to do that. So that litigation is playing out, and we're actually expecting right around Thanksgiving EPA's response to our initial challenge and our initial arguments. And so that's really going to pick up the pace in that litigation. We think that maybe sometime in the spring or early summer, we'll have a decision out of the DC Circuit regarding that challenge. So you've got that playing out in the courts. And at the same time, we do expect, based on everything we've heard during the campaign and based on statements from a lot of the folks who are going to be sitting in President Trump's cabinet, that they're going to take a hard look at those tailpipe standards from the Biden administration and decide what they want to do with those standards. We think it's likely that those standards will be rescinded and reformed and changed and made. They're going to take another look at that regulation and hopefully come out with something that is much more workable for not only the auto industry but for consumers as well, because ultimately this boils down to the cost of transportation for consumers. And we're worried that if the Biden EPA tailpipe standards are enforced as they were finalized, it's going to have significant impacts on the U.S. economy and on U.S. consumers if they're put in a situation where they can't purchase the vehicles that they want to purchase and they can't purchase the fuels that work best for them. So we're hopeful that a new Trump administration is going to restore some sanity to those tailpipe emission standards and create a playing field that is more level and more fair for liquid fuels and other vehicles.
Well, one thing I know the ethanol industry is grateful for this Thanksgiving is a new Congress coming back next year with your ethanol champions back in both houses, and also a great supporter in place as the new Senate Majority Leader, John Thune.
Well, we're very encouraged to see many of our friends, in fact, all of our friends, returning in both the House and Senate. We think that bodes well for any congressional action on renewable fuels in the next Congress. And we're especially excited to see Senator Thune elected to the majority leader position in the Senate. The last time we had a great friend in that position was the other senator from South Dakota, Tom Daschle, who was majority leader some 20 years ago. And that was really a golden era, I think, for renewable fuels policy. So we're excited about that. Senator Thune has really been at the forefront of really any legislation that has had anything to do with renewable fuels over the past 20 years. So we're, like I said, very excited to see our great friend Senator Thune in that position, and think that bodes well for the industry moving forward.
Well, what else would you say the ethanol industry is thankful for this Thanksgiving?
Well, I think we're thankful for the fact that 2024 is going to be another great year for the industry. I think when it's all said and done, we will have record or near record production. Profitability has been strong in the industry this year. We know we're going to have record exports, which is something to be very grateful for. We continue to see growing demand and expanding markets for ethanol exports. And again, I think we're also grateful for the bright future that we know we have in the ethanol industry, really regardless of what the politics look like. Ethanol is a great product. It's an essential part of our energy mix today, and that's not going to change. The industry's not going anywhere. We're going to continue to be a major source of demand for U.S. farmers, and we hope to continue growing that. And that's, again, something we should all be thankful for.
And it's bipartisan. So it doesn't matter who's in the White House, and all of your supporters that got reelected are from both parties. So
Yeah, that's right. And that in itself is something to be thankful for as well. And I think it really speaks to the benefits of renewable fuels. It's not a partisan issue. It's an economic issue. It's a national security issue. And it's an environmental issue. I know there's going to be less emphasis on environmental policy and carbon emissions, but everybody cares about clean air and clean water, and those are qualities that expanding our use of renewable fuels can bring to our nation's energy sector.
all right, thanks a lot, Geoff. Happy Thanksgiving to you, and happy Thanksgiving to everyone from RFA. And that's the Ethanol Report. Thanks for listening.